Hi, welcome back. So now that you've learned how to feed a sourdough starter, how do you make sourdough bread? Well, I'm going to show you a very simple recipe. This is based off of a lot of really commonly used sourdough bread recipes. I've tried several, and this one seems to be the most consistently okay. It's very straightforward. It's easy to follow with a home oven. I'm a professional baker and pastry chef, and I'm used to working with amazing ovens. And let me introduce you to my oven. It's also amazing, but on a different level. I'm pretty sure it's from like 1956. It is tiny inside, and it's kind of I don't really know how to create a side by side to like maybe whatever line of work you're in, but like using something professional to going to using something that's designed for home use, it's a very different transition. So I want to make sure that I'm teaching you guys some bread that can work in your actual home, not the perfect bread like that we would make if we had an actual bread oven every day. So this is actually really fun for me because if I can make bread in this oven, I think anyone can make this bread. So this is a recipe that I like. I make it pretty much every day. So it is 11:30 p.m. I just fed my starter. I'm going to mix my dough. And the reason that I do this late at night is I like to let it rise overnight. So I put my dough to sleep. I tuck my little sourdough bread in. I tuck myself in. And when I wake up in the morning, we've both grown and hopefully we've learned something. So the bread will be risen. And then in the morning, I can shape it and bake it. So I like that schedule. I think it works out really well. It's a really nice ritual. And when I mix and knead bread, I am meditating and praying and kind of unpacking my thoughts of the day and just kind of working them over. So I invite you to do the same. First things first though, remember we've already fed our starter for the day. So this is my fed starter set aside, ready to go. Whenever you bake sourdough bread, make sure that you don't accidentally use up all your starter, because if you bake it into bread, it's gone and you want to have that starter perpetuated. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I have my mixing bowl for my bread, and I'm going to put it on my scale, zero out my scale, and I'm going to weigh out 350 grams of water. Now I want this water to be lukewarm water, so I'm going to start with some cool water. This process is like so soothing to me. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go to sleep without mixing my loaf of bread after this. Okay, so and then I want to do a quick temp check. Yeah, so nice lukewarm water, not too warm, not too cool. That is going to help your yeast to be nice and active. Now to that water, I zeroed out my scale and I'm going to add 50 grams of my starter. And this is really happy starter that was fed last night. So this is in great condition to bake with. Okay, so I've added my starter. And now I'm going to mix these two together. So this part is really similar to like what we just did with feeding our starter. I'm going to dissolve my starter in that water until it's all the same. And when it's all broken up and dissolved in that water, then it's ready to add my flour to it. Okay, so check this out. So now that that's in there, I'm going to add 500 grams of flour. Now, all flour is not created equal. The best flour for bread baking is bread flour. A stronger flour, the different flours have different protein contents. And if you have a really strong protein content, you have really good gluten development, which is what happens when we knead the bread. It's going to make the bread strong enough to rise. You cannot make great sourdough bread with gluten-free flour. You cannot substitute it. It will not hold the proper structure. That's a whole other line of baking that involves some stabilizers and additives that we don't have access to right now. But we're going to be using a mixture of bread flour, and then to add some intrigue, I'm going to add a little whole wheat flour. I'm going to add approximately 100 grams of whole wheat flour because I like it tastes good. It's got a hearty, sweet, nutty, complex taste, and just a little bit of this, like 1/5 of the flour is whole wheat, add some intrigue and character to my bread. So I'm going to first start with my 100 grams of whole wheat flour, and then the rest I'm going to add is bread flour. Now bread flour has a higher protein content than all-purpose flour. All-purpose flour usually hovers around 11% protein, and bread flour is up in the 14 range. So more protein means easier gluten structure. I'm going to go ahead and take this baby all the way up to 500 grams. And this makes enough for one large loaf, which is the amount of bread that I bake every day. Because I only have one Dutch oven, so I make one loaf at a time. Sometimes if I'm really adventurous or I have more than one friend I'm going to see that day, I will make 2 loaves, but here's the deal. I need them to be offset because my bread is going to rise for an hour in its pan after the overnight bulk rise, which I'll show you next. It's going to rise in the bread pan for an hour-ish, and then it's going to bake for an hour. So I need to offset all of my mixing of my doughs by 1 hour. So if I wanted to make 2 loaves of bread tomorrow morning, I need to make sure that I mix them an hour apart at night so that they have the proper rise times. Slightly complicated, but it's worth it if you need more than 1 loaf. This is just for 1 loaf, which is a great place to start. So once all my flour is in, I'm gonna give this a stir. Now you might notice, hey, wait a minute, there's one ingredient from the recipe that's missing. Can anyone guess it? Salt. We're not gonna add the salt right now on purpose. Really important to not add it now, just as important to not forget it later. Here's why. When I mix the yeast and the water and the flour all together, I'm gonna cover it with plastic wrap, let it rest for 15 minutes and come back. And then I'm gonna knead the salt in and I'm gonna knead my dough. And the reason why I do this is a process called autolyzing. And what is happening is the water and the yeast and the flour are essentially all getting to know each other. The water is seeping into the flour, the yeast is spreading through both of them, and they're all coming together in a way that is unimpeded. Salt is going to slow down that process. So we don't want the salt in there just yet. We want to give it a head start, so to speak, of about 15 minutes or so, up to half an hour is fine. So this is a lovely little thing. It doesn't even have to be mixed all the way, just mostly mixed. I'm gonna scrape the rest of this spoon off. I'm gonna cover this with some plastic wrap and I'm gonna let it sit for, 15 to 30 minutes. And this process is called autolyzing. It's really important for structure. It's also really important for flavor. If you skip this step, you will regret it later. And if you skip this step, I can taste it in your bread. Maybe you can't, but I can. So important. See you guys in about 15 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes. Let me show you what's happened in the bowl. So as you can you guys see from that angle? There you go. Do you see what this is? This is some condensation happening on the other side of that plastic wrap. Let's see, can you see it? There you go. That is a great sign. That means our yeast is alive and well and it's working. So I'm gonna save this plastic wrap, waste not, want not. And as you can see, this was like 95% mixed. It's totally like hydrated now. So all those little pockets of flour, they're just like kind of soaked in. So this lets the flavor develop. This gives my gluten structure a head start, and I'm ready to knead. So I'm gonna teach you guys how to knead. Teach you how to be kneady people. So I have my little sifter of small purpose flour, and I'm gonna sift from up high like it's snowing, and clean your floor after you make your bread. I have learned over the years, especially right now. You don't need that much flour, actually. Just a little goes a long way. I like to start by patting my hands on a little bit of flour, and then I clap my hands. And all the extra flour comes off, and just a little bit is left. That's a really great tip. You can also like kind of rub your fingers on the outside, and then just kind of gently flip them. And that gives you just the right amount of flour. Most people, when they're new to this, use way too much flour for every step. Guess what, friends? It might get a little sticky, and that's okay. We'll get out of it, and we'll show you how. Oh, kneading bread is such a wonderful thing. Let me show you. Okay, so I'm gonna plop this out. I'm gonna go back and try to get every little piece of dough out of here that I can. Don't waste all day. And then really important pro tip, soak this in some really hot water right away so it's easier to wash later. I love the pro tips. Basically, I'm going to teach you guys all the mistakes that I've made so that you cannot make them. I think that's another way of saying that. Okay, so dry hands, a little bit of flour, clap my hands. Now, the kneading motion. Never, ever, ever squeeze with your fingers. That's not kneading. That's like playing with Play-Doh. So here's what kneading is. Using the heel of your hand, the flat part of your hand, I'm going to push down and out. So I'm going to push my dough towards the table and away from me at the same time. It's going to feel like this. If you've ever done like a rowing machine, it feels like that. Or like if you've ever done those like They're like little roller ball things, like in an exercise class. It's like that feeling. But this part of your hand, this is where kneading happens. Okay, fingers are just spatulas that scoop your dough up and back towards you so that you can knead it again. The kneading happens here. Okay, so check it out. So I'm gonna bring my dough. So I'm gonna first kind of gather it and press it into kind of like a cohesive little package here. And you do need something called a bench scraper. I love this. This is really helpful. The name of the table that bakers work on is called a bench. And so this is to scrape the bench clean. So you can kind of get underneath your dough and gather up any little stray bits really efficiently. The first few times you might need to add a tiny bit of flour from a pie and just kind of gather this together and smash it down. And then as you go, you will need less and less flour and eventually none. Okay? If you find that your dough is sticking, one quick scrape with your bench scraper will help a lot. And then gently flour from a pie, and that will keep it from sticking again in the future. You can kind of tell by feel when it has enough flour. Okay, so once I have it kind of gathered, I'm going to begin with my first knead here. I'm going to knead it down and away from you. It helps have something heavy to hold your paper down. I've taped down these edges over here, and I use these little heavy weights on that side. That's kind of counterbalancing my kneading action. So you're going to kind of push it down and away from you, and then kind of fold it back into itself, press it down. And you're going to do this for 10 to 15 minutes until it becomes really stringy and stretchy. You'll feel it in your hands. It will no longer feel like a soft mass of dough. It'll kind of feel like a tight, like a bouncy ball. It'll get rounded and smooth. And as you push it away, there's kind of an elastic motion where it's actually coming back to you, kind of like you snap a rubber band. That is the gluten development that's happening. So check this out. So when it's starting to stick to my hands, again, a little bit of flour from a pie. Fun fact, this is actually a tea strainer. I've repurposed it. It's a lovely sifter. I'll wash it really well the next time I need to drink really sleepy tea. It's a super cute tea shop near me. They are closed for the quarantine, but I hope they'll be back soon. Meanwhile, I have their tea strainer to keep me company. Okay, so let's get into a good rhythm. It's really helpful if you have a table that you can clean. You don't need to use paper. You can just really sanitize your table, and that will serve you really well. Because of the virus, I want to be extra careful with this, and so I'm using this parchment paper. And it's a little bit tricky, I'm not going to lie. So here we go. Kneading away. So I'm going to show you as I knead. I'm going to show you what happens after about 10 minutes of kneading. I'll show you what it looks like. I'm going to show you what it looks like after about 5 minutes of kneading. So here's my dough. As you can see, after 5 minutes, it's come together in a nice little ball. See how like rounded it is? It's much more cohesive. It's still, if I hold it though, it's just like flattening more into a disc. So it needs a little bit more gluten development. If I take a little piece of this dough and I attempt to stretch it out, if I try to stretch it out into a square, it just breaks into a million pieces. So we need some more kneading. So I'll check in after another 5 minutes or so. Okay, so look at my dough now. My hands are a little sticky, but let me show you something really important. I'm going to take a little piece of my dough from the center, and if I stretch it out, wow, see how I can stretch it out into a square? And do you see, if you can look really closely, I can almost see light through this. It's so thin, I can almost see light through it. That is called window pane stage. And that means that the gluten has developed enough that when I stretch it, it can stretch so thin that I can almost see through it, but it won't snap like rubber band, right? That is a great sign that your kneading is done. For home bakers, this is usually a lot more kneading than you think. It's like a good 15 minutes for my dough to get that point. Now, this is a high hydration dough, which means it's sticky. So I'm gonna put it in a bowl that's been sprayed, smash it down, flip it over. So I'm gonna stick both sides with that nonstick spray. You will be thankful for this in the morning. And then, believe it or not, I have this quite beautiful little lump of dough. And I'm going to cover it with some plastic wrap and tuck it in. Remember that plastic wrap that we saved? It's coming in handy now. I'm going to pull it on the side of the bowl and stretch it tight across the other side. And it needs to be sealed really tightly. This is real important, kids. Okay, so now you're going to see it now. Check it out. Dough. And wait till you see it after a good 8 hours rest. Good night, sweet dreams, and I'll see you in the morning.